1. This isn't exactly easy to talk about. And if I poured every thought and memory of that moment onto this page, it would quickly spiral into an incoherent mess. The short of the matter is this. My roommate and I took a day off school to go to a local theme park. On the drive home, a drunk driver going the wrong way on the freeway hit us head. The car behind us could not stop in time and smacked into us from the back. That's what the reports say. Anyway, my roommate, Nicole, and I share a very different recollection of that night. Neither of us remember being hit from the back, both remember the initial collision, but neither of us saw the headlights until it was mere inches from the car. Our car rolled. We both remember that moment with vivid clarity, but the wreckage tells a different story. The windshield shattered. There was a flash of white, and the next thing I know, Nicole and I are sitting on the side of the freeway, with an officer handing me a jacket that I swore I was wearing at the time of impact. The confusion could easily be attributed to trauma, but the officers, responding EMTs, and the ER doctors had no explanation for what could have happened. The damage to our car doesn't match the impact. The entire front end is destroyed, the trunk collapsed in on itself at an angle that shouldn't be possible based on the way the car was facing when it was found. We walked away with relatively minor injuries, a cut along the neck, a cut across the forehead, bruises, and whiplash. Painful, certainly. The EMTs strapped me into a neck brace, put me on a stretcher, and asked both me and the responding officer if I had walked out of the wreck. When we both confirmed, they asked how. They told us both that, based on the wreck, how completely the car had been destroyed, we shouldn't have been breathing, let alone walking. I think it was meant to be reassuring. They missed the mark. The emergency room ran a host of tests over the course of 5 hours. Much to their surprise, we had no injuries just beyond some bruising and scrapes. My bruises confused them, however. I had a seatbelt burn along the collarbone, but a straight line of bruises that ran down the center of my chest, too far to the right to the left of the burn, to have also been caused by the belt. No one is quite sure what caused it. We were discharged and unwilling to go back to our apartment. Nicole and I decided to stay with her parents who lived an hour south. For about a week we stayed in her home, until we regained some mobility. Whiplash hurts, friends. When we finally came back to our town, things had certainly changed. Everything felt a bit off. Have you ever had a dream where you just knew something was wrong? Something was different. And it's only when you wake up that you realize the sky was the wrong color or the layout of your house was completely wrong, and you're left wondering how on earth you hadn't noticed sooner. That's the only way I know how to explain it. And that could just be the emotions running high. But there are some things no amount of trauma or stress can handwave. We live in a small university town. Even then, town is a bit generous. It's really about 5 square miles along the coast. I've lived here for 4 years and know every inch of our little pocket city by heart. But now things have changed. The coffee shop I pass every morning has shut down despite the crowds that gathered there every weekend for open mic night. I asked an old classmate why it has shut down, and she said the business had been failing for a while now, and they just couldn't keep up anymore. I've never seen it empty or even slow. There was always a consistent stream of regulars outside, myself included. They shut down during exam week, the busiest time for a coffee shop in a college town. There's a space between a convenience store and a Korean barbecue grill that is now home to a CVS. That wasn't there before. For the life of me, I can't remember what was. Neither of us knew what used to be there, but it certainly wasn't the CVS. Part of me really believed that there was nothing there before, but the buildings are so close to one another that can't be possible. There would be no way to drop a full building in a 10-foot gap between the convenience store and the grill. Even if it were possible, 5 days wouldn't be enough time. There are smaller things that I don't have the patience to list. Emojis that I swear used to be a different color. Signs on campus that I thought were taken down months ago. Little things that could easily be attributed to not paying enough attention the first time. But there are so many of these little things that I'm starting to grow more and more concerned. Has anyone experienced anything like this before? Does anyone know what to do? 2. So I was living on the 5th out of 5 floors in a block of flats with my parents. Down on the 1st floor was another flat where my godmother and her mother, my grandmother, lived. My mother would talk to my grandmother, her mother, endlessly all day. This type of constant communication over a mobile phone would accumulate huge bills my father was paying for. Therefore, he came up with an idea. He took 2 stationary phones that only have a small red button in the corner of it, put one of them in our flat next to a window, drilled a hole in the window side, put the other phone at my grandma's, and simply connected them by a cable. So when you press the button, it would ring on the other end and would allow simple communication. Straightforward so far. My godmother was a party animal, but would not tell her mother, my grandma, of her way of life. She would constantly make up stories why she's coming home late or doesn't come back at all. I knew everything. My godmother would call me frequently to cover up for her, because she didn't want to call herself, as she was afraid Grandma could tell she had drinks from her voice. So this one late evening, after 11 p.m., I'm sitting in front of my computer, and my phone rings. It's godmother. Even prior to answering, I knew what she was going to say, and I was right. However, this time she sounded extremely sad and said, "Call Grandma on the direct phone and tell her I am never coming back. You're a big boy now, and I hope you will understand." And she hung up before I could reply. I got shocked by what she said, tried calling back, but she didn't answer. Well, I thought to myself, I still have to inform Grandma. I went to the other room where the direct phone was, passing the kitchen, and told my father that godmother called. He nodded. I proceeded to the room and rang the other end. Grandma picked up. I told her godmother called and said she is never coming back home. I expected an emotional response, but all I heard back was fine, and she hung up. I was surprised again, but just went back to the computer and called my classmate over the mobile phone, and we talked for a while I browsed the internet. Fast forward to the next morning. The first thought I had when I woke up was, is my godmother fine? I didn't call, but dressed up and went downstairs to their flat. I rang the doorbell. My grandma opened the door with a big smile on her face. I was surprised she is so happy, despite last night's fact of her daughter saying she won't come back. I immediately asked if she had returned. Grandma got lost. She didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I stormed into my godmother's room, and there she was, still in her bed, looking at me. I asked her what the hell happened last night. She looked confused. She didn't know what I was talking about. I told her that she called me. She replied that she went to bed early yesterday and she did not call me at all. I turned to my grandma and asked if she remembers me calling her. She said she never received a call from me. What the hell? As proof, I took out my phone and searched the recent calls. It wasn't there. Gone. No record of a call. However, a record of calls I made and received prior to that phone call and after my classmates were there. I got so confused. I called my dad and asked, "Did I tell you yesterday that godmother called when you were in the kitchen?" To my final surprise, he said I never mentioned that. 3. I have often throughout my life had weird, unexplained moments happen. And now that I'm 37, I decided to see how often these types of things happen, or if anything similar happens to other people, when I came across Glitch in the Matrix. On to my story. After getting married at 20, my husband and I moved back in with my mother after my husband left the army. We stayed with her for about 3 years, getting our crap together before buying the house we live in now. We often joke that the fabric of reality is very thin in her place, because of the weird things that happened while we lived there. While my husband was looking for a new job, we'd often stay up late because he had no real schedule, and I'm a night owl, and typically I'm awake more at night than in the day. Anyway, he goes out to the kitchen to get something to drink, and I hear him talking to my mom. She's up late too, watching a movie that my husband lent her. He asked her did she like it so far, and I heard her reply that it was okay. He comes back in, and we decide it's time to go to bed. Later that day, we wake up and go sit with my mom in the living room. He asks her, "Did you finish watching the movie and how was it?" My mom looked at him puzzled. She told him she didn't watch it yet. My husband looked at me and I at him as if to say WTF. I said, "Mom, I heard you answer him last night when he went to get something to drink before we went to bed." She shook her head violently and said no. She told us she was asleep at that time and then said to stop trying to scare her. We went into detail about what we experienced and she looked bewildered. She swears that she wasn't up at that time and that she hadn't seen the movie yet. Another weird occurrence was my husband swears up and down that while he was brushing his teeth, I came in to use the bathroom and randomly yelled at him, and asked him why does he rinse his mouth after he brushes his teeth, that it makes brushing his teeth pointless if he rinsed out his mouth. I was so disgusted. I told him that I would never tell him to do that, as I myself have to rinse my mouth after brushing my teeth. It would be very gross to leave old paste in your mouth, and I would never get on his case about something so stupid as his hygiene routine. He also said I yelled at him about the way he pulls into the driveway, that I told him to back in instead of just pull up. I could care less which way he parks the car. I had many more than this, but this is the last experience I will bother to write about. My husband and I were going to go see a new movie. He was super excited to go see it, but I told him we already saw it. He said it's impossible because it was just released. He said maybe there was a B movie with the same title around the same time. I told him that it was a movie with the same name and the same actors in it. I told him there was no way they'd release two movies with the same title and the same actors that wasn't a sequel. He blew me off, and we went anyway. During the movie I kept telling him about what would happen next, even quoting lines from the movie. After the show he asked me did I watch it online or something like a pirated version. I told him no. I wasn't that interested to see the movie in the first place, so I wouldn't waste time on poor quality bullcrap like that. I said there was no way for me to have seen it sooner because we went on opening night, yet somehow I had already seen it with him. Things like this continue to happen to me. So much so my husband asks me which version of myself I am. I often wonder if he believes me or thinks I'm crazy. I've had several other experiences like this, and I can't help but think, what if we're in a simulation of life? What if the world is long gone? What if we opted in for this simulator to remember the past of green grass and blue skies, a world more peaceful than our actual reality? And that's why a lot of people experience these glitches. 4. Throughout my life, I constantly notice weird patterns, and I wonder if anyone else can confirm some of them. Number 1. The summoning ritual. If you are waiting for someone or something to appear, it will appear the second you relent and accept that it might take a while. For example, if you wait for a bus and it seems like the bus is late, it will not appear as long as you constantly check the time and have your thoughts at waiting for it. Also, fear plays into it. The more you fear that you'll be late because this bus is absolutely necessary for you, the longer it will take to finally arrive. But as soon as you put your attention somewhere else, it will appear. Another example would be, if you're waiting for the pizza delivery that's overdue, and you put off starting the movie since you wanted to start it at the same time as eating the pizza. As soon as you decide, whatever, I'll start the movie right now then, the doorbell will ring and the delivery service stands in front of it. So the summoning ritual is basically, when you choose to give that annoying thought and thing attention that you actually wanted to push off until after the thing appears that you were waiting for, the thing that you were waiting for will appear. Number 2. The too excited to get it situation. The more you are excited about something, the more will happen that goes against you getting the very thing. For example, you ordered something online that you desperately want. You know the package will arrive soon, and you can't stop to think about finally receiving it. The higher you wish to get it, the more obstacles will appear. Delivery will take more days than usual. It will arrive partially broken or incomplete. On top of that, you will realize that some important part that you need to actually use it isn't part of the very thing you've ordered. Therefore, you have to place another order that will take additional days to get to you, before you can finally use the thing. Another example, the hype for new games. The stronger the hype, the worse the game, movie, or whatever. The bigger the excitement, the more will happen for the game, movie, or whatever to be ruined until or upon release. Number 3. The fear attracts bullets, courage repels them secret. If you're in fear of something bad that might happen to you, the stronger your fear is, the higher is the chance that it will happen. The more attention you give this fearful thought, the more real it becomes. Contrary, if you're able to ignore it and be courageous, the less real it becomes. Example, the more you fear about being late at an important meeting, the more obstacles will appear that make you lose time. The moment when you ignore it and accept the circumstances or even the possibility of being late, somehow magically you'll be on time. Or it will at least not matter since no one will notice or something else come up that made you being late insignificant. Number 4. The universe wants you to be wrong. If you fear something bad might happen and you talk about it to someone, it will not happen. If you fear something bad might happen and you keep it to yourself, it will happen. I don't have an example, just that I began to notice that when I talked about something that bothers me to someone, situations will change even though the people I talk to have no influence on the situation. Number 5. The shut up or fail secret. As soon as you talk about your goal, you will fail to reach it. Keep it to yourself until you reached it. Every time when you're excited about something like a project of yours, you will feel like you're in flow and get so much of it done. But if you dare to tell anyone about it, your flow will disappear. You will lose your focus and your will to continue pursuing it. Example, you're interested in writing a novel. For days you have so many ideas, your writing went well. You're like 100 pages in that are interesting and fairly good. You tell someone that you're writing a novel, and from now on you can't seem to get even one page written. You lose interest in your own project and you stop finishing it. Another example, you changed your diet to lose weight. You already managed to lose a decent amount of pounds. Some friend mentions it and you both talk about your new diet and what you've already lost, etc. Somehow the pounds won't drop any further from then on and you'll soon lose interest to continue the diet. Number 6. The pride ruins results. When you've achieved something and brag about it, you'll either lose it or can't achieve it a second time. Or when you're in the middle of achieving something and you brag about it, you'll not be able to achieve it anymore. Example, sports. The bigger the talk of someone before a match, the bigger the fall. It's always the humble person that wins and always the bragger who loses. Number 7. The thought alert system. If a sudden unexpected thought of something or someone comes up, the thing or person will appear in your space of perception on the very same day or at least the following days. Example, thought, oh, I haven't heard from XYZ in years. Wonder how they've been. At the same day, the phone rings and person XYZ calls. Another example, this car reminds me of Sarah. You see Sarah a few hours later. Another example, a random word comes up in your head that you haven't heard or used in years. The whole day this word seems to be used by people in all kinds of situations. Has anyone else experienced those, or anyone agree or disagree? Have you experienced different patterns? It seems to me like those are always the same. No idea why, though. 5. Quick backstory. I have been at my job for nearly a decade, but over the last 5 years I have worked on the road. I leave my house Monday morning and usually return Thursday evening or Friday morning, depending on the work. In any given week, I put about 1,500 miles on my truck, and I always take the same highways home. The only reason I mention that last part is to quell any notion that I may have been fatigued from driving, or was unfamiliar with my route home. The following events took place over the span of about 20 minutes in the spring of 2018. I don't feel like this was a glitch in the Matrix as much as it was a glimpse into the Matrix. Believe me, I fully understand how ludicrous this all sounds, but it did happen. Anyway, I was on my usual route home and everything was going fine when I hit a bit of traffic on a stretch of Interstate 225, where there normally isn't any at that time of day. There was a non-fatal accident on the opposite side of the highway to mine, and naturally, that caused all 4 lanes on my side to slow to a crawl to get a better view. We never came to a complete stop, but just cruised by it all at about 5 miles per hour. I was anxious to get home, so as I approached the traffic I glanced down at the clock to see that it was 3:42 p.m., and then called my wife to give her a rough estimate of when I would be home. Eventually the congestion cleared, we were back to the highway speed and on our way. The bridge into my home state was in sight, and I knew that it was a 45-minute drive home after that, barring any further delays. As soon as my truck entered the bridge, I saw something strange. I was in the far right lane, and about 200 yards ahead I saw a soft grey rectangle standing vertically in the middle of the adjacent lane. It looked to be about 3 by 4 feet in size and hovering a few inches off the ground. I thought at first that it was a large piece of sheet metal, and cringed when I realized there was a semi-truck barreling towards it. The thing offered no reflection, and an uncomfortable feeling came over me when I realized what it resembled. If you've ever seen a perfectly rectangular section of dead pixels on a computer monitor or old television, when they're just grayed out with no real dimension to them, that's exactly what it looked like. It was like the fabric of reality suddenly went dead in that specific area. I stared at it longer than I probably should have just to make sure that what I was seeing was in fact there. I instinctively slowed my speed, bracing myself for the impact of the semi-truck. But whatever that thing was, the driver didn't seem to notice it. As soon as his truck drove over that area, the rectangle vanished, just poof, gone, as if nothing was ever there. I glanced down at the clock to see what time it was, 3:51, and like it forced its way into my mind, I realized that the last 2 times I looked at the clock, the numbers added up to 9, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 5, and 1. On its own, that isn't really all that strange. However, my entire consciousness succumbed to the sudden magic of the number 9. I really can't explain it any other way than that. All at once, countless multiplications flew through my mind, and the sums of the answers to every one of them was 9. They were no longer simple numbers, but I felt as if they held some great secret. 9 was everything. It was made of everything, and everything was made of it. It felt utterly cosmic. 9 seemed to convey its primary magnificent role in the universe, and my mind was under siege by all the numbers. Along with everything else that plagued me, there are 18 letters in my full name. I was traveling 54 miles per hour, the date was 6/3/18. The radio was tuned to 103.5, the product of my birth date is 213,300, of which the sum is 9. I was surrounded by 9s, I couldn't escape them, nor the inner workings of the universe itself. It was a deeply personal experience, yet I felt ruined by it all. The torrent of numbers plunged me into my first ever panic attack. So much so that I pulled off the first exit past the bridge and got out of the truck to take a long breather. By the way, the road onto which I exited is called Telegraph, 9 letters. I could almost literally feel the weight of it all in my brain, and for a few fleeting moments, the entire world seemed different to my eyes. Whether by accident or by design, I felt like some higher intelligence provided me with a glimpse behind the curtain, and I simply couldn't handle it all. As I circled around my truck in a gas station parking lot, I texted my daughter who was away at college and asked if she ever heard of anything like what I saw, and if she knew of the esoteric math that I had been exposed to. I'm sure she thought I had lost my mind, and I'm not sure that I didn't. The panic subsided, and I was finally calm enough to drive. By the time I arrived home, it was like it had all been erased from my mind. There was no residual disquiet, and nothing further happened. Save for the oddity that I am certain I posted this story to the Glitch subreddit. However, I cannot find it anywhere. It simply just isn't there, and I know that I didn't delete it. I was so sure that I posted it that I even remember binging Glitch videos in the hope that someone would read it. Also, I have changed cell phones a couple of times since then, so I have no access to the text between my daughter and I. This will probably be the last time I write or talk about this story because honestly, I don't want to relive any of what happened because it still freaks me out. Thank you for your time. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, episode 111. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, the other day, the new computer I built recently, I decided, you know what, the fan I've got in there, it's a good fan, but it's not really meant for that CPU, it's not doing quite the job it should cooling it. So I decided to get a 360mm liquid cooler fan with the 360mm radiator. And I checked before I ordered it because I thought that is awful big looking. I don't know if it'll fit in that case because it's kind of like a mid-sized tower. And I checked, and sure enough, yes, they did say it was compatible with that size of case. Specifically, they said it was compatible with that case. It's a Corsair 400C. So I thought, great, right, no problem. So I got it, and I tried to put it in. That does not actually fit. And it was about a centimetre, half a centimetre maybe, from actually fitting. Basically what was happening was the cables at the top where the USB connectors and the power button are. The little block they're into, that's what was in the way. And I thought, well, this is annoying, I might have to get another case. So took it out, put the old fan back in, everything's still working okay, that's fine. And then I thought, well, you know what, because I'd followed the instructions exactly, because I do that, because I like to get things right. And I thought, I'm going to look at people installing this fans, and sure enough, the first video I clicked on, I can't remember his name, but it was a lovely wee Scottish fella. Well, I say wee, don't look that wee, but a lovely Scottish fella. Scott's getting things right, as always. and he was installing that same fan into, I think it was maybe a similar sized tower, and the way he did it was completely different from what the instructions told you to do. So I did it his way, which basically meant I took the fans off the radiator, slid the radiator in, and then I put the fans on the opposite side from where they were. Just kind of slid them in front of that, then screwed everything up, and boom, no problem at all. In fact, it was frustratingly easy. That doing it that way was no problem at all. When, if you follow the instructions, it seems like you've wasted your money when you haven't. But anyway, it's installed now, and it's working well. And I'll work everything in properly, possibly at the weekend, maybe on Friday night if I get done early. I do plan on doing a stream. I'm hoping it basically keeps things cool enough so that I can stream VR gaming, because I occasionally you'll get things freezing because there's too much going on at once. You're streaming, you've got a game, you've got multiple windows open, and anyway, I'm hoping that will sort the issue. Certainly seems to have improved performance. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.